A fragrant scent, that's what a voluptuous woman perceives coming from a temple, an aroma that makes her blush, excited, and she rushes towards it at full speed, confident of finding an eternal body she can consume to become immortal. Inside, there was a boy, delirious from hunger. Recalling how he got to this point, it seems he had entered the world of immortals, but since his meridians were blocked, he couldn't practice. Changan, that was the boy's name, named after the leader of the group he wanted to join, who revealed to him that he possessed a legendary eternal body that would make anyone who consumed it immortal. This led to the protagonist being captured by countless beasts on numerous occasions, with no way to defend himself. So, eventually, the sect's elderly leader was forced to break the seal and leave him in that temple for protection. Angry, he begins to destroy the room while blaming a thieving god for such punishment. However, when lightning strikes in front of him, he apologizes to the divine for his actions and settles down to sleep in an attempt to conserve energy. However, the protagonist couldn't rest, as a woman with peach-colored hair approached him and gave him a deep kiss without warning. Of course, this surprises the boy, who pushes the woman away. Naturally, the peach-haired woman uses her charms to approach him again and playfully take Changan's arms. He manages to resist and asks her if she is a human or a ghost, to which she smiles and, with a dazzling flash behind her, confesses to being a ghost. Changan is left as terrified as he is confused, recalling the words of the old man who told him that he had placed a prohibition around the temple to prevent demons and ghosts from passing. The woman bites his neck, causing the protagonist to lament dying in this way after hiding for 3 years. Suddenly, a screen informs him that the Invincible Dominion system will be activated to defend against the ghost. Upon hearing this, the protagonist understands that he is now invincible within this 2-meter radius, capable of doing anything. He manages to generate a shockwave that repels the ghost, and then looks at her confidently, ready to counterattack, wanting to see the capabilities of the invincible field. The woman mocks this and, fearlessly, rushes toward the protagonist with a murderous aura, but he reacts quickly and delivers a direct blow to her face, releasing a burst of energy into the sky that destroys every fiber of her body within seconds. The system indicates that by destroying the female ghost Oi training Triple Heaven, he gained 10 field points, suggesting that if he collected 100 of these points, he could extend the Invincible Dominion by 1 meter. Curious and thinking that he could potentially dominate the world by expanding the field enough, he asks how he obtained this score. The system replies that it is something he must discover for himself. Because of this, the boy begins to curse the system, but then faints from hunger. In the distance, a multitude of monstrous beings watched in astonishment at the energy released by the protagonist's attack, which shattered the sky. They speculated that an immortal treasure had fallen to the lower world. Indeed, a sword began to fall at great speed from the space between the clouds left by Changan's strike. Xuanwu, the upper world of the Immortals. We see that it is from this place that the powerful sword departed, destroying several towers in this realm. The Holy Immortal Sword, that's what a man with platinum hair calls it when he summons the 12 immortal generals, and begins to explain how an unknown shadow fist attacked the weapon, sending it to the lower world. With fury, the man orders the generals to retrieve the weapon at any cost and to kill anyone who gets in their way, which they agree to before dispersing in beams of light. The protagonist begins to wake up the next morning, realizing that he fainted from hunger. Confused, he wonders how a female ghost could enter his territory if the temple had restrictions preventing the passage of demons and monsters. Unable to find an answer, he decides to put this aside in order to find food. He considers the possibility that the dome can move with him, but when he takes his hand out and feels a terrifying cold, he dismisses this possibility. He attributes this feeling to the presence of other hidden ghosts, so he has to find a way to expand the dome to get food. Failing to come up with a feasible idea, he watches a red-haired girl being thrown into the temple, with a robust man threatening her, Ling Bayar, with harm. The girl threatens him, saying that her father will deal with him if he hurts her. Changan considers letting them fight in peace, but with the thought that maybe they have food, he decides to intervene. The protagonist informs them, in a threatening manner, that he was the master of this territory, and they should provide him with food as payment for disturbing. Ling Bayar, astonished, tells him he can't speak to Lai Zio that way, and precisely the intimidating man grabs the girl by her hair before launching an energy attack. On reflex, Changan defends himself, although in the end, the attack doesn't land, thanks to the dome that slows down and dissipates the energy impact. Of course, this surprises those present, but Lai Zio reminds himself that this guy was just a human, while he was a warrior with decades of experience. So, when provoked to attack, he doesn't hold back and summons a weapon to strike at the protagonist. But the white-haired young man remains unfazed, taking the weapon with the tips of his fingers, breaking it, and then tossing it at Lai Zio's head, instantly killing him and earning 500 points since his enemy was a 3rd-level cultivator in the Golden Core realm. This makes the protagonist realize that the higher the cultivation level of his victim, the greater the field value he will receive. Having gathered a field value of 510, the protagonist can expand the Invincible Dominion to a 5-meter radius, giving him more freedom to move within the temple. Surprised that the boy could defeat Lai Zio, Ling Bayar wonders if this human was actually a mundane expert hiding in the Shiwen Dashan Mount. Changan, on the other hand, ignores her, focused on looting the warrior's corpse and complaining about finding a storage ring he couldn't use due to not having a cultivation base. Without asking him anything, Bayar begins to recount how she brought the 9-sword sect to the area in search of an immortal treasure rumored to have fallen to the mortal world. However, they were ambushed by Lai Zio on the way, and everyone except her ended up dead at his hands. Of all this, Changan is only interested in the fact that she wasn't allied with that man. He tosses the storage ring to her, urging her to open it and give him the food inside as a reward for saving. Delighted to now have a whole chicken to eat, Changan begins to plan how to get more field points to expand his dominion when the red-haired girl begs on her knees for him to take her as a disciple. Changan flatly refuses, as he only has the Invincible Dominion as his defense and doesn't know what he could teach her. But thinking he has no more food than what he just obtained from the ring and no way to venture out into the world to find more, he agrees to accept her as a registered disciple after she passes a test. At that moment, his system informs Changan that having this master-disciple relationship with Lin Bayar has rewarded him with 100 field value points. This excites him as he sees an opportunity to gain more ground without leaving the Invincible Dominion. Bayar notices his expression of happiness but points out that he smells bad, so the protagonist orders her to place a bucket outside the temple to bathe later. The girl does so but quickly returns inside to report that she felt a tiger demon at the core stage hiding in the forest. In contrast to the girl's reaction, Changan eagerly goes out to hunt it. In his mind, this tiger speaks of how it was attracted to the site by a potent fragrance but hasn't been able to get any closer after witnessing Changan defeat a ghost. Even though it's tempted by the scent of an eternal body, Changan is aware of this and, therefore, extends a portion of his arm outside the Invincible Dominion to lure the tiger. Despite his disciples' protests, who doesn't understand what's going on, this works, and the tiger quickly approaches them. This makes the protagonist realize that the Invincible Dominion must have a certain level of isolation of his essence, explaining why Bayar couldn't detect his foul smell earlier when the field was smaller. The tiger interrupts his thoughts by leaping to attack him. However, the tiger remains suspended in the air as Changan intended, demonstrating the immense power he holds within that field. Instead of killing the tiger himself, he delegates the task to Bayar. The girl summons a sword, but she lacks the strength to strike it down. Thus, Changan ends up having to kill the tiger with his own hand. This death earns him 800 points of field value. While he hands the sword back to Bayar to cut the tiger's meat for eating, he decides to upgrade the Invincible Dominion with the points he now possesses, without fully understanding all the benefits it will provide. The protagonist is amazed by the new power bestowed upon him, allowing him to illuminate the vitality of all things and bestow wisdom upon others, as well as granting him more subtle control within the Invincible Dominion. Trying to test this last feature, he asks Bayar to give him 2 small herbs. Taking them in his hands, he releases energy upon them, which, to Bayar's great surprise, transforms them into rare elixir-level spiritual herbs. Changan chooses to ignore the redhead and continues to experiment until nightfall, when he successfully summons a small and adorable fairy from those herbs, whom he affectionately names Ziob. Next, Changan creates an elixir that he gives to Bayar to enhance her abilities. Excited, she takes it, and Changan's system informs him that the elixir has caused Bayar to ascend from the 6th level to the 7th in one go, earning him another 50 field value points. He also makes it clear that he will receive more field values the higher the cultivation level of his students. Seeing the benefits of having disciples, Changan considers accepting more disciples to help them improve their levels as he did with Bayar, thus expanding his Invincible Dominion without much effort. While he thinks about what the second ability he gained from expanding his Invincible Dominion could be, a rather rusty-looking sword falls from the sky. Bayar is surprised to identify it as an immortal treasure, although Changan doesn't fully understand her and claims he saw the weapon fall from the sky. Nonetheless, he takes it and notices it feels quite weak, possibly due to its significant fall, so he uses his ability to repair it, making it as shiny and powerful as when it was in the Xuanwu world. Despite this, he believes he could still easily break it, so he gives it to Bayar, who cries with joy at her master's kindness. Changan downplays it and, instead, uses his abilities to repair the entire temple, which was damaged due to the female ghost and Lai Zio, making it shine. With everything fixed, he tells Bayar to rest, but at that moment, the newly repaired roof is destroyed again by several warriors who fall from the sky. Among them, Lai Bashan, the lord of the evil dragon cave cave at the 9th level of the Golden Core realm, demands to see Lai Zio and Q Kyantu, the patriarch of the Ghost Bone Sect, praises the spiritual energy in the Shiwandashan mountain, attributing such power to the same immortal treasure. These two warriors, completely ignoring the presence of Chen Changan and Ling Bayar, begin to argue over who will claim the special herbs and all the valuable items on the site, angering the protagonist, who reprimands them for trying to take his things. Bashan is not concerned with what he said, declaring himself the new owner of the territory and launching an attack that further destroys the temple, mocking that there's nothing he can do to stop him. The protagonist wants to do something but can't because the man is not within the invincible dominion. Ling Bayar doesn't accept such insolence and informs Bashan that it was her master who killed Lai Zio, surprising the man. Kyantu, on the other hand, ridicules his opponent for being surprised and questions whether a mortal could really have killed someone so powerful. Regardless, Bashan descends toward Changan, threatening him to hand over the immortal treasure, or he will kill him. Changan is not concerned about what he said, thinking that both Bashan and Kyanto entered the invincible dominion. What does affect him is that Ling Bayar, once again, tries to defend her master. Bashan declares that he will kill her too, even if she is the daughter of the Nine Sword Sect master. The redhead confesses to her master that Lai Zio was not the only one responsible for the death of her companions, as Lai Bashan was also behind those murders, surprising the protagonist. The dark-haired man accepts no further delay and launches an attack, but the white-haired young man uses his power in the divine dominion to stop his attack, revealing that he can even control the cultivation base of his opponents. With this ability, he places the cultivation base of Lai Bashan and his allies in the refinement realm, the lowest category of all. He then tells Bayar that now that he has suppressed their cultivation bases, she could kill him on her own. Seeing this, Kyantu's opinion changes completely, and he wonders if the protagonist is also in the nascent soul realm. Bayar advances against Bashan, drawing the golden sword her master gave her, promising revenge against the warrior. Even though she is at a disadvantage, Bashan still taunts her by summoning a shield. However, this doesn't help him much when he realizes that the sword is the immortal treasure they sought. The sword not only destroys the shield but vaporizes Lai Bashan's entire body, leaving only his boots and a large trail of destruction in its wake. The red-haired girl is shocked by the display of power, while the sword itself seems to display a satisfied expression. Kyantu realizes the power of the weapon and considers stealing it before leaving. However, he quickly notices the protagonist's eyes on him and realizes that staying there will mean his death. So, he chooses to retreat with his men for now to report the situation to the Grand Ancestor, satisfied with at least knowing the location of the immortal treasure. But Bayar was not so kind, and bloodthirstily starts firing several sword beams, managing to pierce through all of Kyantu's allies with them, granting Changan 1,500 field value points for these actions. He uses these points to extend the invincible dominion once again, giving it a range of 22 meters. Thanks to the power of the invincible dominion, the Ghost Bone Sect's men couldn't leave, catching Bayar's attention. With a tender face, she asks why this is happening, making it clear that they were sadistic people who didn't deserve to live. Kyantu hears this and defends himself, saying that his group was not evil and had been operating normally for decades. He pleads with the protagonist for mercy to let him go. The way they humiliate themselves in front of him embarrasses Changan, but then he looks at them with a cold gaze, making it clear that he knows their true intentions. With this said, Kyantu orders his men to launch a simultaneous attack, which turns out to be entirely useless against the combined attack of Bayar and Changan, killing these henchmen in seconds. However, this did give Kyantu time to escape as the invincible dominion became unstable. Concerned, Bayar asks what they will do if more of them come looking for the immortal treasure, but the protagonist downplays it, thinking that having many of them come will help him earn more field value points. In the Ghost Bone Sect's hideout, Kyantu cursed what happened, declaring that they should let the Supreme Elder deal with these kids to recover the immortal treasure. At that moment, one of his lackeys appears to inform him that the ancestor who ascended to immortality 5 years ago was gathering, which both relieved and worried the patriarch. In the ancestral temple, all the members of the Ghost Bone Sect knelt before a figure who explained that they were already an immortal who had descended to the lower realm and was under the orders of the Lord. This excited Kyantu because if they had that ancestor on their side, who was the strongest person in the Ghost Bone Sect, dominating the world would be a piece of cake. Apparently, this bearded being hears these thoughts and rebukes Kyantu into while releasing a wave of energy, stating that he should focus on finding the immortal treasure before he reaches the Kyushu continent. The patriarch then informs him that he knew where it was, in the immortal temple. In the temple, Changan and Bayar were eating peacefully, while the protagonist contemplated what had happened. He realized that he had to make Bayar look for food outside the Invincible Dominion, as the resources he could generate were limited. He also thought that the basic version of the Dominion only gave him invincibility that allowed him to fight anyone. However, now, with the all-living ability, he could control everything inside the dome and enhance his own perception of his surroundings. Realizing that Bayar's cultivation level was still quite weak, he saw that he could use the all-living ability to enhance Ling Bayar's cultivation. With this in mind, he took the girl by the arm and informed her that he had a way to improve her cultivation, with a process that could be painful at first but gradually become quite enjoyable, as if she were ascending to heaven. Upon hearing such a description, the redhead blushed, thinking it was something sexual, and becoming embarrassed about it. However, she then showed more daring, willing to make her first time memorable. Changan didn't understand the implications and just placed his hand on his disciple's head, emitting a great power while asking the girl to endure the power coursing through her as he made it his own. Bayar began to suffer, but the system indicated to Changan that there was no change in the girl's level, so he intensified his power, causing great pain to the redhead and pushing her body to the brink of bursting. There was no turning back. The protagonist continued to emit energy, pleading with his disciple to endure. In her mind, Bayar began to recall her training with her father, who yelled at her to be strong if she wanted to assume the leadership of the Nine Swords sect in the future. She felt that she was going to die from the power increase, but knowing her destiny, she exclaimed that she couldn't die, thinking that she would be with her master until the end of the world. A massive lightning bolt struck the redhead, causing her to faint from the pressure. Outside the dome, a being complains about them doing all this in front of his nose, offended because they considered him dead. The protagonist checks on the condition of his protege while recalling that on this continent, there were 9 qualification levels, in addition to rumors of another 10 levels above these 9. He wonders what the maximum number of grades he could increase in Bayar and, in general, in all living creatures. A great lightning storm makes the forest animals run, while a woman with beast ears, Hongi, a nascent soul, wonders if it was caused by the immortal treasure. The demon king Chuobi, with a nascent soul accompanying her, declares that they will die if the storm strikes them. The reverse snake demon king with a nascent soul adds that not only them, but even the mountain could turn to ashes. Returning to the protagonist, he sees his disciple being responsible for that lightning storm. He explains that he ordered the power of thunder tribulation, intending for her to absorb it as grueling training. When the redhead starts absorbing this electrical tribulation, it begins to decrease. So the trio of demon kings approaches to see what's happening in the area in reality. When they arrive, they see Bayar meditating, absorbing her power. Amazed by the immense power that this 18-year-old girl possesses, they decide to recruit her. During this training, the system informs Changan that Ling Bayar has progressed from the 6th level of foundation building to the 7th, earning him 50 field value points. Following this, more reward notifications appear with up to 50 and even 100 points, probably due to this continuous level increase. Realizing that Bayar's potential was superior even to that of an immortal treasure, the beasts decide to recruit the girl as their disciple to nurture her power. Hongi is the first to jump, but she is stopped by Chuobi, clarifying that she wanted the same thing. However, it would be the reverse snake who gains the advantage by knocking both of them down to advance further. Thus, a battle begins between these beastly beings for the right to be Bayar's master. But before getting too carried away, Chuobi sees it would be better if they just approached the redhead and asked her to choose one of the 3 of them as her master. After a while in meditation, Bayar reveals that she had reached the 3rd level of the golden core, earning praise from Changan. The redhead is excited at the thought that she's now on par with the elders of the Nine Swords sect, believing she can surpass them. The protagonist casually comments that she will soon reach the nascent soul level. As a reward for her effort, he gives her Lai Zio's powerful ring, which he obtained earlier, along with other valuable cultivation resources, according to Bayar. This doesn't matter to Changan, who can't use such items. His main goal was to expand the Invincible Dominion across the entire mount. At that moment, the redhead notices the arrival of the trio of demons. Without much explanation, Chuobi presents the girl with 3 golden balls condensed from the essence of the body of the great demon as a gift for accepting him as her master. Then, the reverse snake offers her an immortal fruit that would grant her the ability to live eternally, and was so rare that it took 10,000 years to grow. The latter gift seems to catch the duo's interest, with Changan revealing that the elderly sect leader had consumed that fruit, making him interested in obtaining it. Finally, Hongi admits that she doesn't have a direct gift, but she claims that if Bayar accepts her as her master, she will treat her like a daughter and make her attain immortality with the power of her celestial demon fox clan. Despite these tempting offers, Bayar rejects them all, declaring that she already had the best master of all, moving Changan. Seeing that the protagonist didn't even have a cultivation base, they see him as a fraud, causing the trio of demons to take offense and decide to kill him before making the redhead choose one of them as her master. Chuobi is the first to release his power for a powerful attack, stating that just one of his fingers will turn Changan into dust. However, the silver-haired protagonist receives the blow directly and doesn't budge an inch, surprising everyone. He says that he also wanted to test their power and raises his middle finger to attack the bull-headed demon. Unlike Chuobi's attack, his finger is capable of gravely injuring the demon, who apparently had the most robust body of the trio. Arrogantly, the protagonist asks the other two if he was qualified to be Bayar's master, which they accept with fear. The reverse snake offers the immortal fruit as an apology gift. Noting the cleverness of the green-haired man, Changan wonders if he should take these three as his apprentices. He takes the fruit and asks the demon how he obtained it. The snake begins to tell that he obtained it from the ancient bronze mountain in the forbidden zone of Fengju's life 3,000 years ago from the ancestor of the golden python sect, revealing that apart from this fruit, there was no other like it in the lower realm. Hearing this, Changan thinks, a little disappointed, that he didn't know there were still things from the upper realm hidden in that plane. Meanwhile, the snake is more relieved, believing that the silver-haired one might spare his life, especially since he accepted the fruit without hesitation. Changan hands the fruit to Bayar for her to eat, asking her to leave the core. Upon consumption, the silver-haired man notices an increase in immortal content in the redhead's body, confirming that what the elderly sect leader once told her was true. With the core in his hand, he instantly buries it in the ground. Cordially, the serpent clarifies that an immortal tree can only grow in the upper world, so the temple's grounds are unsuitable, even if it's considered treasure land. However, the trio of demons is shocked to see how, a second later, a large immortal tree with fruit on its branches grows from the ground. The protagonist snaps them out of their shock by stating that the fruit would not be enough to compensate for their crime of invading his home and offending. This prompts the demon kings to start begging for their lives, and Changan offers them the choice to submit to his will or die instead, an option that he deems a mere bluff in his thoughts. Nevertheless, the demons agree to serve him. The protagonist explains that they will now have to address him as their master, and as a reward for submitting to him, he starts releasing power that increases the ranks of these three beings, just as it happened with Bayar before. Once again, a distant figure sees this, causing anger because he wants to change the fate not of one, but now of three people, vowing to kill him. However, the tremendous energy of lightning only clashes with the invincible dominion, failing to pass through, but he promises to return to kill him. After finishing, the three demons express their gratitude for the increase in power, even Chuobi, who sees his wound healed. The reverse snake takes out a talent stone with which they can check their current levels, as it changes color according to one's grade, revealing that they were 6th grade before. They become excited when they see that they are now 8th grade, although Changan seems a bit disappointed, promising to raise them to at least 9th grade. Now it's Bayar's turn, who was previously at the 4th grade. When she tests the stone, it changes colors until it reaches a golden color, but it turns into a common stone afterward. This surprises everyone present because the pane indicated 9th grade, although it doesn't explain why it didn't stay that color like the rest. Bayar worries that she did something wrong, but the serpent, intrigued, suggests that maybe the stone acted that way because Bayar was now immortal. Changan seems to agree with this, explaining that above the 9 grades of the lower realm, there are another 9 qualifications, so it's very likely that Bayar is now in one of them, and that's why the talent stone couldn't detect it. The protagonist takes advantage of this to tell the three demons that if they stay with him, reaching that point won't be difficult for them either. They believe his words and, with admiration, kneel before him, swearing loyalty. The reverse snake, as always respectful, offers to go to Jeepa Mountain to hunt a dragon king pheasant to give to them as a celebration because Miss Bayar is now immortal. Both Bayar and Changan are confused by the monster he mentions. So, Hongyi explains that the dragon king pheasant is a monster with the best meat in the earth realm. Hearing this description, Bayar's mouth waters, and she offers to go herself under the pretense of testing her new powers, which Changan eventually agrees to, understanding her true intentions. Next, we see a happy Bayar on the golden sword with a dragon king pheasant in each arm, moving at incredible speeds. Kyantu watches the scene with his henchmen and attacks the girl, demanding that she hand over the immortal treasure in exchange for not hurting her. The redhead realizes that, apart from Kyantu, his companions were in the realm of nascent soul, so she doesn't see any chance chance of winning. The girl tries to appear brave, but the patriarch doesn't accept this and launches an attack with a giant axe. However, it seems that the sword doesn't like Kyantu's comments and creates a shield to protect the girl. Upon seeing this, somehow, Kyantu realizes that Bayar is now in the Golden Core realm, even though she was in the Foundation building realm just a few days ago. Assuming that she had monstrous talent, Kyantu's henchmen declare that they must kill her if they don't want her to become a danger to the Ghost Bone Sect in the near future. Thus, the girl makes a thrust with her sword that clashes with the Patriarch's attack before beginning her escape, as stopping the attacks nearly depleted her mana. In the Immortal Temple, the three Demon Kings play a board game with their new master while he fans himself and boasts of having the upper hand in the game. However, he wonders why Bayar hasn't arrived yet if it's getting late. Hongyi says that he shouldn't worry, as Jeepa Mountain is far away, so she's probably still on her way. However, the fox woman suddenly feels that Bayar's breath is becoming weaker. Hongyi's comment reassures the protagonist, who agrees that the redhead will be fine, as long as she doesn't encounter monsters and cultivators above the nascent soul realm, showing that he doesn't feel the girl's weakness, unlike the other monsters. Chuobi communicates through a glance with the serpent, wondering if it's correct to inform the protagonist about Bayar's condition. However, the green-haired one says that he will probably know, so Hongyi assumes that maybe it's a test. The pink-haired girl was running desperately, relieved to see how close she was to the Immortal Temple, but just as she was about to arrive, a hand of energy falls on her, causing her to bleed and drop the pheasants in the process. The one responsible for the attack is a masked woman who orders them to find the immortal treasure to turn her soul into a ghost slave. The weapon, which had a life of its own, begins to escape from the Ghost Bone Sect. However, the masked woman manages to catch it before losing it. On the other hand, Kyantu approaches the very injured Bayar with a power sphere in hand, wanting to kill her. This attack is not carried out as Hongyi intervenes. While she takes the pink-haired girl in her arms, Chuobi and the serpent stand in front of them, ready to end the patriarch's life. Bayar asks Hongyi if it was her master who sent them, confirmed by her. Remembering what happened, Chuobi yells to Changan during the game that Bayar's breath was weak, and even if everything was part of his test, he should intervene. This surprises Changan, but he quickly analyzes the situation and assumes that his disciple has had an accident. Trying to be respectful, Hongyi exclaims that although she doesn't understand his thinking, he shouldn't allow the situation to go so far just to prove a point with Bayar to the point of leaving her almost lifeless. Emitting a murderous aura, Changan orders them to bring Bayar safely since she was close to him. He also permits them to mercilessly kill anyone who gets in their way. Hongyi now heals Bayar's wounds while the pink-haired girl tells her that the people who wanted to kill her were from the Ghost Bone Sect, with 3 of them being nascent soul cultivators. Although she cuts herself while talking due to her injuries, the fox woman shouts to her companions that it was essential to bring her to Changan to heal her because her soul was unstable. Kyantu laughs at this, saying that the pink-haired girl was under his soul-devouring spell, and without it, she would die. The serpent mocks his revelation because he knew that spell and knew that they could save Bayar if they killed the person responsible for such magic. Kyantu nervously falls to the ground, but then declares that it would be impossible to kill him since the 3 supreme elders of the Ghost Bone Sect were present. Without moving from the Invincible Dominion, Changan uses a megaphone to order his disciples to kill them all since someone who would harm his people didn't deserve to live. Ready to fulfill their promise, Chuobi, in his beast form, attacks the masked woman, and even though she protects herself with a shield, the strength of the demon makes her yield. The serpent takes advantage of this to attack the masked woman with his tail, and another sect member, also in his beast form. Seeing them give in, he tries to attack Kyantu to save Bayar, but the masked woman steps in, stating that they would have to defeat her first. Changan was sitting on the temple's roof, angry. He could sense the slightest movement happening within the Invincible Dominion, but couldn't sense anything from the outside. Remembering that he had been taught that his eternal body would put anyone around him in danger, he blames himself for not being able to protect Bayar, thinking that if the ability of the Invincible Dominion worked on himself, he could become strong and protect not only Bayar, but also the Elder. Waking up, the protagonist sets a new goal, to expand the Invincible Dominion to the entire 100,000 mountains to protect those he cares about. On the battlefield, Kyantu was protecting himself as best as he could from the display of power between his team and the enemy forces, stating that he wouldn't last half a second against such warrior. Amid the battle, the masked woman drops the immortal treasure, falling right in front of Kyantu. With her so close, the patriarch recalls that the most important thing was not to win but to return the immortal sword to the Ghost Bone Sect. However, even though he initially considers leaving, he decides to stay, thinking about the future his organization would have if the 3 elders died now. Elevated. The protagonist can see Kyantu moving between the rocks, confused about what he would do. The patriarch decides to capture Bayar, taking advantage of the Demon Kings being busy in the middle of the fight to harness her cultivation base for the organization. Understanding the idea and fearing the worst, the protagonist runs towards the pink-haired girl, even if it means leaving the Invincible Dominion. The patriarch notices this from a distance and shouts at him in anger, recalling what he did with Lai's Io. At that moment, the golden sword abandons Kyantu and goes towards the protagonist, transforming into a golden glove for battle, an action that surprises Changan himself, who realizes that the weapon is capable of reading his thoughts, and he has been underestimating. Upon seeing how he controlled the immortal treasure, Kyantu understands that he had no chance against him. He attempts to escape, but the white-haired man doesn't let him. He chases after him and, with the glove, strikes the patriarch, disregarding his pleas for his life, until destroying his body entirely. Then, he takes Bayar and brings her inside the dome. However, Kyantu is still alive, existing as a small ghost, feeling powerless because he lost the body he had been cultivating for over 100 years. He supposes that it wasn't that the protagonist didn't let him go, but rather, he couldn't sense his soul to destroy it. While crying, he detects a scent, the eternal body's scent coming from the protagonist, making him realize that he still has a chance to save himself. In the temple, Changan is angry to see that Bayar has such a severe wound, leaving her on the brink of death. Although relieved that he arrived in time to save her, he uses his powers to heal her. In a matter of seconds, the pink-haired girl is conscious, and the first thing she does is apologize to her master for not being able to bring back the Dragon Peacock King as promised. But the protagonist corrects her, saying that he was the one who made the mistake and should apologize for arriving late. In the sky, the Demon Kings engage in an epic battle and manage to throw the masked woman from the sky, causing her to land inside the Invincible Dominion. As she gets up, the woman gets angry when the protagonist glares at her, but Changan doesn't care, moving in a second to stand in front of her and slap her. Astonished, she tries to counterattack but receives one slap after another from the protagonist until she's slammed to the ground. He then places his foot on the woman's head, challenging the other members of the Ghost Bone Sect to come down. Although they are skeptical of the protagonist's strength, when they hear Hongi call him their master, they begin to doubt that he is just an ordinary mortal. This leads the woman in the dress to assess their situation, where they are at such a disadvantage, contemplating the possibility of fleeing and abandoning their ally. They can't make a decision and are interrupted by the soul of Kyantu shouting for them to save him. The woman in the dress finds it pathetic, but her expression changes to a more serious one when she hears the revelation that the eternal body is down there, adopting a much more focused fighting stance. She then asks her companion, whom she refers to as Third, what they should do. He responds that he had been waiting for hundreds of years of cultivation for this day, the reason they should deliver all the riches they obtained today. The serpent scolds them for underestimating his master, although Changan just looks at them with a sadistic look, asking his student to let them come. In his mind, he claims that he is not really an immortal, but he is much fiercer than one. Challenging them, Changan emits smoke to provoke his adversaries, even attracting the serpent with the scent of the eternal body. Third can't resist and rushes towards the protagonist, only to have the protagonist grab his face and start smashing it into the ground repeatedly, in such a brutal way that Hongi watches with terror as her master does it. The system gives him 1,200 field value points for killing a 4th level nascent soul cultivator. Changan admits he feels tired but is excited because he still has 2 more nascent soul souls to kill. Chuobi asks why he felt so attracted to the master a moment ago, to which the serpent suggests it might have happened because he possessed the immortal treasure. Meanwhile, the last priestess of the Ghost Bone Sect was frustrated by her companion's defeat and initially chooses to retreat. However, Changan stops her with a burst of energy. Instead of injuring her, this action elevates her qualifications, which surprises her not only because of its unexpectedness, but also because it was the first time she had heard of someone capable of doing this. Everyone present, including Kyantu, wonders why this happened, and the patriarch questions whether they are making fun of him. However, the overwhelming energy causes the woman's body to start suffering, and the lightning cloud, angry because the protagonist is performing this enhancement again, leaves, saying she would inform her father. Finally, the woman explodes with all her might, giving Changan 2,000 field value points for killing someone with a 1st level god transformation cultivator qualification. This makes the protagonist wonder if he can only increase people's qualifications to that level for now or if he can improve this with time as well. At that moment, the masked woman wakes up, and Changan decides to give her an upgrade too until she explodes, now giving her a value of 1,200 field value points for reaching the 4th level nascent soul cultivator qualification. This makes her a bit surprised, as the calamity didn't didn't appear as it did when he performed this upgrade previously. Then, the system informs him that it found an error, and the host can now only increase someone's cultivation once before waiting a month to use this ability again. This worries the protagonist, wondering if he can fix this bug. The system continues by saying that he could upgrade the Invincible Dominion to version 3.0 for 5,000 field value points, a sum the protagonist has and even exceeds by 200. He decides to proceed with the expansion, increasing it to 74 meters. Kyantu's soul is filled with fear, prompting him to decide to leave once and for all. However, the protagonist senses this because he was inside his Invincible Dominion. He stops Kyantu when his disciples hadn't even noticed his presence. The spiritual ball begins to plead for its life, even offering to reveal the entire history of the sacred sword and dismantle the ghost Bone Sect from within if allowed to live. Changan takes the spiritual ball's body and tosses it to the serpent, asking him to take care of it until Bayar wakes up so she can decide Kyantu's fate. He knows that the patriarch could be useful, but he doesn't want to discomfort the pink-haired girl, knowing how much the patriarch intimidated her. Meanwhile, he sends Hongyi to retrieve the dragon peacock kings that Bayar lost on the way to eat as soon as she awakens. That night, the entire group enjoyed their meal happily while the protagonist analyzed his situation. Even with the new extension of the Invincible Dominion, he was still not even halfway to covering Mount Phaexian as he wanted, let alone the 100,000 mountains around. He understands that the best way to obtain points would be to recruit more people to fight for him and gain experience. However, even Bayar and the powerful demons didn't seem strong enough to provide the points he desired. It's likely they would need bodies and an immortal sword to confront everyone. Thinking about the latter, he realizes he can attract monsters, demons, and ghosts towards the treasure to make it release its aura for them to detect. So, he stabs the weapon into the ground and starts yelling for it to do exactly that, much to the sword's dismay, while his disciples watch from a distance, puzzled by his behavior. This goes on for an hour, 2 hours, 4 hours, and while everyone has gone to sleep, Changan begins to berate the poor sword because no more enemies appeared all night. With their master's loud outbursts, all the disciples wake up in the middle of the night. Kyantu, who ended up staying after all, approaches the protagonist to tell him that probably the reason no one is approaching is because the aura of the 3 demon kings is too tyrannical for anyone to get close. Hearing this, the trio confirms it, with Chuobi proudly stating that he never met anyone with a more powerful body than him, apart from his master. Of course, this annoys Changan, making him use his power to lower his cultivation base to the Kai refinement realm, the lowest of all, leaving the group quite fatigued despite just waking up. This action seems to reconfirm to Kyantu the overwhelming power that Changan possesses, making him tremble. With the problem resolved, Changan goes back to the immortal treasure to make it release its aura, although it tries to escape. The silver-haired man restrains it with ropes, reluctantly making it release all its essence, even penetrating the Invincible Dominion barrier. From afar, several demons watch this with surprise and immediately identify the weapon as the immortal treasure. They run, fly, levitate to the location of the weapon, hoping that with it, no one can stand in their way. However, as they get closer, the protagonist has no problem disintegrating all of them within seconds with his power without hesitation. This display of power shocks Bayar and the others, making them reaffirm their loyalty to Changan out of fear. After a couple of hours, Changan had dealt with an uncountable number of enemies, and aside from revealing that he didn't belong to any realm, the system informs him that he has only gained 3,400 field value points. This is still far from the 5,000 points he needs to upgrade the Invincible Dominion once again. The sword was exhausted, still tied to the tree, from releasing its aura so much. Only low-level demons approached the immortal treasure, and Changan couldn't understand if it was because the nascent soul monsters were too far to sense its aura or if they chose to watch from afar. So he calls Chuobi, Hongyi, and the serpent to give them the mission of spreading the news that the immortal treasure was in the immortal temple across the 100,000 mountains to the most powerful demons. After Serpent Inversa and Hongyi fought over who knew Yunju better, Changan Hong sends he and Chuobi to spread the news about the immortal treasure. He also sends the serpent to gather information on which faction of the longevity sect was overthrown by the previous forces, as well as to inquire about Feng Qian, the head of that sect. He instructs them to provide news as soon as they acquire it, gives each of them an elixir, and promises great rewards for completing the mission, urging them to be careful. A week passes after this, and 2 people, Ling Qingshan, the master of the Nine Swords sect, and Ling Hai, an elder of the Nine Swords sect, walk through the mountains. It seems they were heading to Phaexian Mountain, where they heard from Qiu Kyantu that Bayar was at at the top of that place with an immortal treasure in her possession. They wanted to bring the pink-haired girl back with them, as they didn't want any members of their association to have any association with immortal treasures. They claim that anyone who possesses them is guaranteed a destiny full of misfortunes. Changan was reclining on a couch, with Kyantu giving him a massage when he detected the entry of these two individuals into the Invincible Dominion. He became excited upon sensing them as nascent souls. The patriarch recognized who they were and decided to hide, not wanting them to see him in such an embarrassing state. As he was about to enter the fight, Bayar enters the scene, recognizing these people as her father and grandfather. Upon learning this, Changan immediately gives up the idea of killing. Ling Qingshan orders his daughter to return with them, but she refuses, saying she wants to stay with her master. This upsets her father, considering the protagonist weak and stating that if he were as powerful as they claim, he could kill a nascent soul with a single breath, not a single blow, as Toro himself could do. Before taking any action, Changan feels the arrival of someone, namely the three demon kings with a nascent soul rank, who get into a combat stance. Ling Qingshan is concerned as they are of a higher level than him, so if a battle were to ensue, they would surely die. Knowing this, he tries to calm them, saying they didn't come for the immortal treasure but to find a person, believing it didn't matter if Bayar's supposed master died as long as she was safe. However, Bayar herself intervenes, telling the demon kings that they are not enemies but family. Upon hearing this, Chuobi and the others apologize, surprising the man. Then, Hongyi, blushing, approaches her master to report that her subordinates have completed the assigned task. Of course, this confuses the newcomers, making Linghai wonder if Changan was a god who couldn't even see his cultivation. In his mind, Changan wonders how many powerful people there are in the Nine Swords sect and starts forming a new plan. Linghai, quite respectfully, apologizes for Ling Qingshan's arrogant attitude, explaining that he acted that way to protect his daughter. Nonetheless, he insists they should take Bayar with them, both for her safety and their hope. This irritates the demon kings and Bayar herself, who makes it clear that she wants to stay with her master. Contrary to their expectations, Changan warmly says that he won't intervene if Bayar wants to leave with her family. However, he also states that he won't fight them under any circumstances if she doesn't want to go with. Linghai continues to explain that the higher realm immortals will eventually come down to claim the immortal treasures. Attempting to be respectful, he doubts that Changan could stand up to them and thus believed it was better for Bayar to leave so her life wasn't at risk. He also reveals that the ancestor of the Ghost Bone Sect had come down to the world, so he would surely come to recover the immortal treasure, accompanied by Immortals, a force that not even the Nine Swords sect seemed able to defeat. Kyantu gets excited upon hearing that his ancestor had come down, thinking he could leave the immortal temple soon. However, when these men start warning him about how dangerous and evil Kyantu is, he, in his spirit form, comes out of hiding to yell at them and ask Changan not to believe them. He makes it clear that he is no longer a dog whose only desire in life is to die for him, his father. Such humiliation is observed by Linghai and Ling Qingshan, who wonder if Changan is truly so strong. The latter starts to think that perhaps he could deal with the Immortals, remembering that he said that all of them were family. In whispers, both question their situation, asking if they could really trust Bayar with Changan. Changan notices their doubts and tells them that as soon as a new guest arrives, he will show them what he can do. At that moment, a group of demons arrives shouting at the temple, asking Hongyi angrily where the immortal treasure and immortal tree were. All of them were nascent soul-level demon kings, so both Ling Qingshan and Linghai become concerned about what could happen. Despite that, Bayar confidently takes out the immortal weapon, telling them that her master gave it to her and calming them by assuring that her master can handle them all. However, the demon kings notice the weapon and order to attack it first to take it with. Changan just tells them to calm down and see what he would do. He then starts to dance with a series of rather odd movements reminiscent of Sailor Moon, making everyone present cringe at the sight of the silvery-haired man, except for Hongyi, who couldn't help but think about how handsome her master was. Seeing that this is undermining his credibility, Bayar has to assure her relatives that her master doesn't usually act like this. Next, Changan places a finger on his forehead and says the word spirit. This simple action causes all the demons to swell and explode, earning him 10,000 value points, which add to the ones he already had, giving him a total of 15,540 points, enough to upgrade the Invincible Dominion to version 3.0. Without much thought, he accepts the upgrade. Upon doing so, he is surrounded by a red aura that releases a fragrance, an odor that makes his demon disciples hungry. Changan understands that this hunger is because of him, even though he doesn't understand how his eternal body's seal is starting to disappear. Additionally, he starts to hear a sound in his head, and an arms trail emerges from within him. "You have ruined the Demon King's spiritual power," is what that voice is reproaching him. While a portal begins to open, Changan is incapacitated, so he becomes concerned when his demon disciples approach to attack him. Fortunately, or unfortunately, he disappears before they can touch him, to the confusion of everyone present who couldn't understand what was happening. Suddenly, Changan appears floating in a completely dark space. In front of him, he finds a door, and upon passing through it, he arrives in a vast forested area filled with temples, a majestic sight that is overshadowed by the foul odor that emanates from the surroundings. Changan recognizes the place as the interior of the system, so he is confused as to why it looks so lifeless. He lets out a loud shout, asking if anyone is there, to which the voice in his mind responds that there isn't. With irony, the protagonist then asks if it knows his mother's name, to which the voice, after thinking, says it's his dad. The response doesn't amuse Changan, and he shows the void his middle finger, hoping that the voice sees it. After this, he tries to compose himself and, more seriously, discusses how before entering that place, the prohibition of his eternal body was beginning to fail, so he asks if there was any way to seal it again. The voice denies this possibility, stating that, for now, it's not possible, which alarms Changan, wondering what he could do then. The voice suggests that he leaves his body in that place, which Changan views as being in a prison, much worse than the immortal temple. The protagonist realizes that this update, unlike the others, is only causing him problems, so he asks if the reward they were supposed to give him has been eaten, to which the voice completely denies. Then, laconically, the voice says it will give him immortality forever, even though he can't use it now because he doesn't have the source of immortality, a statement that only confuses the protagonist. It also says it will give him the mirror and moon ability that offers a dividing effect, a power it doesn't explain how it works, but simply urges him to use it. Changan then releases a beam that creates a new body, although the one he had previously just falls, disappointing him as he couldn't control the divisions he created. The voice then tells him that it wasn't impossible for him to become stronger before running him out of that place, without giving him many more explanations, leaving the silvery-haired man irritated with many remaining questions. The voice tells him that if he finds the source of immortality, then he can return to obtain immortality forever. Changan appears through the portal in the temple. Naturally, those present are confused, trying to find out what happened to him, making him realize that, although he spent some time in that dimension, it seemed like only a few seconds in the real world. Then, Changan starts thinking about the system's consciousness, but eventually puts it aside to ponder how immortality might work and how he could obtain it, assuming that perhaps the immortals who are descending might have it. Later, Ling Qingshan and Ling Hai were walking through the green forest of the temple, while the protagonist was lying in the shade of a tree, accompanied by Hong Yi and Ziob. Ling Qingshan and his father were discussing how the place was still sunny despite them having taken a nap, assuming it was because of Changan's influence. This made them question whether he might be the immortal assassin, a legendary figure who had caused a stir tens of thousands of years ago and had beheaded several higher realm immortals. Although they weren't entirely sure of the answer, Ling Hai felt confident that with Changan present, they no longer had to fear the immortals. He even considered the idea that he might be able to help the Nine Swords sect, although Ling Qingshan wasn't entirely sure if he would support them, even if he seemed to have such a good relationship with Bayar. What does seem certain is that they could go to the Ghost Bone Sect to capture that person, taking advantage of the fact that they had no leader, a unique opportunity that hadn't arisen in over 10,000 years. Because of this, they both approach the silvery-haired man, and Ling Qingshan himself apologizes to Changan for offending him earlier, informing him that they will withdraw. He also tells Changan that he can leave Bayar in his care, as it was what he wanted. Changan bids him farewell, saying he can return whenever he wants, and that if he happened to encounter an immortal, he could tell them to come directly to him to deal with. This gesture excites Ling Qingshan, making him think that the protagonist was quite kind, although Changan was mainly interested in the value points he could obtain. After this, he goes over to the red-haired girl to say goodbye, supporting her in her decision to stay and see the benefits it could bring her, even though she tries to convince him to stay a few more days. Changan was playing with Zioben when she returned to her diminutive fairy form, having previously appeared in a much larger form with a more traditional Japanese-style dress. Hong Yi sees this and mentions that Zioben is treading the path of the demon. She explains that the initial transformation of the plant can't be considered a demon but rather a sprite. And to become a demon, one must absorb sufficient spiritual energy from the world, as well as the essence of the sun and the moon to tread the path of the demon and start cultivating. Hongyi admits that this process took her several years to accomplish, even though she was hailed as a genius among the ancient Sky Fox sect. Meanwhile, Zobin has managed to tread the path of the demon in less than a day, making her easily considered an unmatched talent among the demon sect. However, Zobin couldn't maintain her figure because she had just entered the demonic path and hadn't practiced the demonic cultivation method to control her spiritual power. In other words, if she found a suitable cultivation method, Zobin could control her spiritual energy and the shape of her body to avoid easily shrinking and bring new changes to her body. At the mention of this, the protagonist blushes at the thought of an older, voluptuous Zobin caring for him, which prompts him to order Hongyi to teach her exercises to Zobin, calling her his most trusted subordinate. Hongyi blushes at the praise and assures that she'll make Zobin a good helper for her master, thinking that there shouldn't be a problem in bringing her to the elders, considering Zobin's apparent talent, and she herself was a great supporter of the Sky Fox sect. With this, Changan hands the fairy over to the fox woman, saying that her happiness, her lap pillow, depended on her, and he bids them farewell amidst their tears as they take flight. Feeling melancholic, he admits that it felt strange to be alone again now that everyone had gone, without realizing that Chuobi was right next to him. The bull tries to cheer him up by showing affection, much to the silvery-haired man's dismay, as he begins to scream in distress at what he's doing to him. After a few days, Changan tries to train his body division, becoming angry because a simple snake killed his copy, to the point that he orders Bayar to cook snake soup for dinner. Apparently, the strength of the condensed clone was determined by the amount of value points spent on it, and the greater the investment he made in it, the stronger it would be. He also reveals that his clone's personality was exactly the same as his, which was a bit frustrating. The clone could dissipate on its own after receiving a single blow, and the damage it received was not transferred to the original body. He wanted to continue experimenting with this ability, but he only had 4,950 value points left, which he could only exchange for a nascent soul clone, so he starts rolling on the floor, desperate for the arrival of a new enemy. Later, Bayar senses the presence of an enemy, a monster, and Changan feels them coming. This being knocks on the door, and upon opening it, reveals herself to be a voluptuous woman with monster ears, asking to see Chen Changan. When they see her, both Bayar and Changan are dazzled by her beauty, and the protagonist introduces himself in a flirtatious manner. The woman introduces herself as Bayar, a member of the ancient Fox sect, who came at the request of Hongyi to inform him that she had been imprisoned. At the Nine Swords sect, most of its members were lying on the ground, unconscious or dead. Linghai watched in terror as the enemies before him, the 12 immortal generals, were in the lower realm. One of them mercilessly interrogates him to ask where the immortal sword is, but the old man remains silent, not wanting to endanger his granddaughter and Changan. Another guardian notices this and approaches, commenting that it would be better to directly search in his soul, initiating this information extraction process that had the risk of leaving the victim as a fool or even killing. This guardian learns that in the lower realm, there was apparently a legendary immortal assassin, which we assume is Changan. Upon hearing this, another guardian asks how it's possible, considering that these beings disappeared 10,000 years ago. The long-haired guardian, without losing his malicious smile, admits that he doesn't know how but is sure of it because the old man had one of these beings in his memory, and it was he who had the immortal sword in his possession. Knowing this, the one who appeared to be the leader of the group declares that even if the legendary immortal assassin existed, they outnumbered him and, therefore, had more power. So, guided by the mind-reading guardian, they are led to the immortal temple to recover the golden sword. Meanwhile, at the ancient Fox sect's cultivation place, the celestial demon fox Empress notes that a powerful immortal has descended to the lower realm. At that moment, a fox girl approaches to inform her that Hongyi and Zobin still wanted to leave the sect and requested an audience with her. Confused, the girl asks the Empress why they should keep Zobin locked up when it was clear she didn't have a cultivation foundation. The Empress becomes irritated by her doubt and explains that even though Zobin didn't have a cultivation level, her qualification had exceeded the 9th grade, so once she starts cultivating, her promotion level will increase at an unimaginable speed, making her a highly important ally for the sect in the long run, and keeping her was not a burden to the group. With this clarified, she decides to go to the traitor, Hongyi. They go to the jail where the red-haired fox woman reiterates that she doesn't want to stay in the sect, as she is on a mission from her master, and if she's not willing to teach Zobin, then she asks her, please, to simply release them. This angers the other demons who did not consider humans as their equals and declare that if the other sects heard that one of their members members had taken a disciple from one of them, they would be mocked by everyone. This causes further anger in Hongyi, who releases a great aura that pushes back all the demons, except the Empress, who tries to attribute that power to her sect, using it as an argument in her favor for Hongyi to stay. But she emphasizes that the power was a merit of her master, and if the sect also supported her master, they could benefit greatly. The Empress tells her that the immortal was in the lower realm, and if her master had the immortal treasure, it was only a matter of time before he came for it. She also doubts that he could face him because, even if he was the strongest in this world, he would only be at the peak of the transformation realm like herself, far from the power of these beings. With this clarified, she bids farewell to Hongyi, saying that she will have to see what is more important, her own life or that of her master. Hongyi had her priorities clear and in her mind. She was thinking of a way to escape and return to her master. Bayar remained in the immortal temple, where she had just sensed the arrival of the immortal. So, knowing that the immortal treasure was there, she understands that she should leave before getting involved in the conflict. As she turns around, she sees that Changan has a rather dark expression, so she assumes that he also felt the presence of the Immortals. However, the protagonist gives her a deathly look, threatening her because her group had imprisoned his allies. This shocks the demon girl, thinking about the great passion he must feel for his disciples to ignore the imminent danger and think about them. With fury, Changan tells her to go to the 50-year-old woman to tell her to surrender to Hongyi and Zobin in the next 3 days, or there will be consequences. Bayar accepts it, but doesn't miss the opportunity to ask him what he will do to deal with the Immortals. The protagonist, not knowing exactly who they are, admits that he is looking forward to their arrival because mosquito bites don't always happen. A great storm of lightning ensues, among which several beings are flying. The sect's Empress is surprised by the arrival not of one but of 13 Immortals when it has been thousands of years since they descended to the lower realm. She, along with several members of her sect, watches the mobilization of these beings toward the immortal temple through a mirror activated by her sky gaze ability. The woman is confident that Changan will die, so she is happy to have made the right decision, and she might even witness a battle of these beings without danger. Upon arriving at the site, the Guardians can feel the immortal energy surrounding the area, as well as essential elements such as the immortal pattern, immortal energy, and the immortal fruit tree. Essentially, it was an immortal land, so these Guardians decide they should take her back to the Xuanwu immortal world. Although they hadn't entered the immortal domain yet, Changan managed to see them and he becomes excited, counting 12 of these immortal beings. However, both Bayar and Chuobi were quite worried about their arrival, to the point of trembling in fear. The protagonist calms them, saying that with him, they didn't need to fear that anything would happen to them. But the terror increases when a body falls in front of them. It was Linghai, who was motionless. The Guardians question whether he is the immortal assassin, to which the protagonist doesn't answer but reprimands them for not coming directly for him if they wanted the immortal sword. The Guardians become angry at his insolence and declare that they killed the entire 9-sword sect. This revelation triggers Bayar's anger, causing her to use the immortal treasure to attack them with lightning from a distance. This does not harm the Guardian that she attacked, but it does enrage him, making him launch an attack against the red-haired girl. Changan reacts quickly and cuts off the attack, saving her. This prompts mockery from the other Guardians towards their older companion, saying that age is catching up with him. However, he tries to defend himself by saying that he only used 1/10 of his power. Nonetheless, they admit that they shouldn't underestimate the protagonist if he can even resist an attack from one of them. Bayar drops the golden sword and begins to cry inconsolably for the death of her grandfather, her father, and the disappearance of her entire sect. Changan tries to comfort her and recalls his past of destruction. With seriousness, he wipes away her tears and assures her that he will kill the Immortals today to avenge her. He takes the sword and unleashes great power. As for the Guardians, they only mock his statement and agree that it's better to first obtain the sword and then kill them all. For this reason, a woman in the group summons the sword to them, but after a minute, nothing happens, leaving them shocked because the weapon doesn't respond to them. They assume it's because they were too far away, so some of these Guardians approach. The woman tries the spell again, but the same thing happens, the sword doesn't come to them. This shouldn't be possible since the power was taught by the venerable immortal and shouldn't be invalid. Changan himself tells the sword that it can return to them if it wishes to, and he won't stop it, but it vehemently refuses. One of the beings decides to attack immediately, but the woman who tried to summon the sword stops him. She notices that Changan expected them to attack first, which is strange, so she decides to release her attack. Lightning begins to fill the skies, and the celestial thunder is the law for the lower realm, capable of controlling and balancing all who violate the heavenly way. This power could kill him, and she was sure it wouldn't destroy the immortal sword since it was made of black iron by the venerable immortal. A portal opens, and the invincible lightning is excited by its appearance, thinking it could cut people as it likes. However, upon seeing that it's Changan, it becomes frightened, thinking of his previous history, and it retreats back into the clouds, much to the group's dismay. Because of this, the protagonist mocks them, saying that the immortals, as powerful as they looked, were actually weak. Of course, this irritates the group, causing several of them to attack him directly. However, Changan doesn't hesitate and unleashes an attack with his sword. When they realize that he's no ordinary human, they avoid the strike, realizing that they would have ended up badly if they hadn't. What surprises them most is seeing a rift in the space of that world. The Kyushu continent had its own laws just like in the Xuanwu immortal world, which is why the group is surprised that Changan was able to create a rift so easily, as only people who surpass the power of the continent's laws would be capable of such a thing. Worried for the first time since their arrival, they consider retreating so that the venerable immortal can send more powerful individuals. However, they stand still when they see with surprise how Changan, unaware of what that rift was, passes his hand through it. This is a destructive power that even their venerable immortal couldn't possess. Upon hearing this, Changan becomes disappointed, as he thought it was a glitch he could use to bribe the system to help him more. Realizing that it wouldn't be of much use to him, he withdraws his hand from the rift and tells these beings that he will kill them. The group understands that he won't let them go and decides to charge against him, hoping that it will give them a chance to survive and win. However, they come to a sudden stop when the silver-haired boy emits a golden aura, something they describe as the power of the law. Changan asks Bayar, who is still crying, to watch as the ones who killed her grandfather are about to die. Hopeless, the guardians have nothing left but to threaten him, saying that if he kills them all, the venerable immortal of the Xuanwu upper world won't spare him, highlighting that it's not worth doing it for the sake of avenging a group of ants like the Nine Swords sect. This further infuriates the protagonist, who declares that he doesn't care whether it's a venerable immortal or an immortal king. Anyone who dares to go to Phaxian Mountain to kill him will be mercilessly killed. He vows to defend the innocent people of that world and be a champion of justice. Next, he releases a powerful flame that makes the 12 guardians scream in agony, slowly dying under the astonished gaze of Chuobi and Kyantu. Changan tells Bayar to watch carefully because she will have to work hard to cultivate herself, achieve power comparable to what he shows, and live up to the expectations her father had for her. The Empress and her group watch with fear the unexpected outcome of the encounter, with the certainty that these flames were not normal, but divine fire. Maliciously, Changan comments that the immortals might consider it a good death if he turned them into pills that he could use for his benefit. Meanwhile, the Empress is horrified by what she saw, wondering what her punishment will be for imprisoning Hongyi and Sayab. At that moment, Bayou arrives to inform her of the protagonist's warning to return his disciples within 3 days. Without hesitation, the Empress agrees to send them immediately to the temple and goes directly to apologize to them, hoping that Changan will have mercy on the celestial demon fox sect. Changan was a little confused because he felt like he was being observed until the Empress deactivated her technique. Forgetting about this, Changan is excited about the field value he obtained. However, when he checks his system, it informs him that it is still calculating the points he would earn since the value was too large to be processed immediately. This relieves the silver-haired boy, as he briefly thought that killing an immortal might not be recognized as a death. Bayar interrupts his thoughts by hugging him tightly, tears in her eyes, thanking him for what he did. Instead of making him happy, it makes Changan feel guilty because he was hiding something, and he knew he couldn't tell her the truth until he was sure of the outcome. To comfort her, he asks her to rest for a while, and then he will send her with Chuobi to the Nine Swords sect so she can see the situation for herself. Later, Changan sits at a table, where Chuobi serves him a fine cup of tea from his own spring. At that moment, the Empress, who introduces herself as Ning Su, arrives with Bayou to apologize personally because one of her subordinates made a mistake and imprisoned Xiaoban and Hongyi by accident. Although they were not harmed, the woman was still fearful that he might want to kill her and, above all, make her sect disappear. Hongyi asks for permission to sit and immediately kneels down, scared by the pressure emanating from him, convinced that he could destroy her with a single breath. The protagonist recognizes who she is, describing her as the most powerful ruler among the 100,000 mountains, with tens of thousands of loyal servants under her command. Ning Su, expecting the worst, takes all the blame for what happened, begging him not to exterminate the celestial demon fox sect. Bayar worries to see that their leader is offering herself as a sacrifice, exclaiming that she is someone very important to them. Because of this, she takes a step forward and declares that if he doesn't find her repulsive, she'll let Changan do whatever he wants with her and kill her if he wishes, with the condition that he leaves her Empress alone. Ning-su tells her that she had nothing to do with it, but Changan shows interest, thinking that it's better to have more friends than enemies. He asks the girl if it's true that he could do whatever he wanted with her if, in return, he left her grandmother in peace. Bayar vehemently confirms it. What the protagonist wants to see is her sincerity. So, he stands behind her and hits her back with a wooden stick, then proceeds to repeatedly hit her with the stick. Ning-su watches the scene with helplessness, feeling that Changan humiliated them all with his actions, making it clear that, from his point of view, their origin didn't matter, they were all a bunch of clowns. With those lashes, Ning-su is more than clear that Changan warns them that the fate of their sect could be the same as that of the 12 immortal generals if he wishes. However, in reality, the protagonist's nose is bleeding, and he perversely watches the lashes he gives to the voluptuous demon, who insisted that he hit her harder if he wanted, as she could endure it. But when he delivers a new lash, Ning-su intervenes to protect her companion, despite her fear, demanding that if he wanted to punish someone, it should be her, and that he could even kill her. She makes it clear that she doesn't want him to harm Bayar or her sect. Changan drops the stick, and, seeing Hongyi's face, he affirms that he will forgive them this time. Both women thank him. Changan recalls that Zobin and Hongyi went to the celestial demon fox sect to learn some techniques, so he gives them an immortal fruit as a token of appreciation. However, he throws it to Bayar instead of Ning-su, much to the latter's indignation. Still, the woman bows to tell him that from now on, the celestial demon fox sect is willing to follow him. Although the protagonist says they will discuss such an alliance in the future, he warns that there will be greater consequences in the future if they commit any crimes against him. Outside the immortal temple, the Empress states that cultivating in that area could be a blessing for the 100,000 mountains. She then asks Bayar if she is okay after the lashes. The woman confirms that she is and even comments that she feels that the meridians in her body were much smoother after the lashes, so she is excited about being lashed by Changan again when she returns to the immortal temple in the future. This statement makes the woman worried, and she says that she will have her checked by the doctors when she returns to the celestial demon fox sect. When he is alone, Changan stretches, happy to have one more assistant now. He was about to rest when the system indicates the field value points he obtained. They were 200,000 points, which added up to a total of 200,450 points, which would allow him to expand his invincible domain by 2,400 meters. This surprises the protagonist to the point of shouting. Excited, he's about to ask the system to use the points to expand the field, but he stops to ask first if he could upgrade it to version 4.0. The system says yes, as it only needed 50,000 points to upgrade it, though there was a condition he had to fulfill first. He had to cover the entire Phaxian Mountain in less than a month to obtain the title of Lord of Phaxian Mountain. This was a condition that if he couldn't achieve, it would be reprogrammed so he could try the upgrade again. This angers Changan because, even with all the points he obtained, he could only cover a third of the mountain. He curses the system, telling it that he won't upgrade it in protest. But the system mocks him, revealing that it was in his best interest to obtain the title Lord of Phaxian Mountain because it would give him the opportunity to open something called the Secret Realm, a space where exercises and magical weapons from different figures of the Chinese dynasty would appear. This convinces Changan, who gets excited, saying that he will never be lazy and even backtracks, saying that, in reality, Phaxian Mountain was not that big. So, he asks the system to extend the field by 1,000 meters with 190 of the points he had. This action increases the radius of the invincible domain to 2023 meters, revealing that he still had to cover 50,050 meters to encompass the entire Phaxian Mountain and complete the mission. Later, Changan lies down, thinking of ways to quickly obtain the value he needed, although he doubts if what he offered to his disciples was truly useful to them. Bayar and Chuobayi, on the other hand, entered the territory of the Nine Swords sect, where the girl witnessed the dismembered bodies of her companions with horror. But when she sees Ling Qingshan's lifeless body, she begins to cry. Fortunately, a voice calls her to relieve her worries. It's her father, accompanied by all the members of the Nine Swords sect who were still alive, and he was happy to know that someone had killed the 12 immortal generals, meaning they wouldn't be target. Ling Qingshan explains that what she had seen were mere illusions created by a talisman given to him earlier by Changan, although her grandfather had been left in the same spectral ball form as Kaiantu during the conflict. Recalling how this happened, Ling Qingshan recounts that he was about to leave the immortal temple when the master stopped stopped. The protagonist tells him that he was considering how he could let him die. This statement worries Ling Qingshan, making him apologize for trying to take over the leadership of his group. But Changan corrects him, indicating that the Immortals would try to stop him, and there were possibilities that the Nine Swords sect would be destroyed by them to find him. Therefore, they had to be smarter, and he asks the man to move the entire sect to a place where he could protect them, prioritizing the safeguarding of everyone's lives over the group's inheritance. Although he also offers the alternative of letting him create a talisman that can create illusions to confuse the Immortals and make them think he had killed them when it was not true. However, he makes it clear that the second option was something that not even he could know if it would be successful. Ling Qingshan goes for this offer because he saw it as something inevitable that the Nine Swords sect would face the 12 immortal generals, even if he didn't expect them to come down to the lower realm. Changan accepts his resolution and, with a smile, says to let him know if they were fine postponing the fireworks. After the explanation, Bayar does nothing but cry, grateful to her master, saying how much she loves him for what he did for her. Ling Qingshan agrees with the intelligence of the protagonist, highlighting that they both shared the same values of kindness and justice as the Nine Swords sect. However, he declares that after what happened, the upper realm and the lower realm would no longer be as peaceful a place as before. While Ling Qingshan explained exactly what happened with her father, Ling Hai, he remembered that he never informed Ling Qingshan that they had survived, as he promised. So he immediately takes out a bamboo stick with which he creates fireworks featuring Changan's face. Changan watches this and, instead of getting upset about the delay, he is happy that the Nine Swords sect still exists. Returning to his thoughts, he confesses that he has so far discovered two functions of the true solution to the immortal path. The first was concealing the breath of the eternal body, and the second was changing his appearance using illusion. However, these illusions had a limit with their projection and creation. So, he tries this last one and realizes that the true solution to the immortal path could be linked to items and carried out by the Invincible domain to be used later to leave it. With this successful experiment, he decides to continue with a new test. In the upper realm, in the city of Wanzhou, its people were in the midst of the Xuanwu festival. An elegant man named Shenwu is summoned by his best friend, an immortal sage of the immortal longitude, who asks him what he was drinking, reminding him that he could tell him everything if there was something bothering. Shenwu admits that some time ago, his native sword was stolen by someone, and he sent 20 of his immortals to recover it. But all of them were killed while he used a spell to witness it. That's why he's trembling with anger. His friend is surprised that there are beings so powerful in the lower realm, although Shenwu clarifies that he was a special case. However, he quickly adds that that person, nevertheless, was nothing more than an ant in his eyes but was protected by the laws of the Kyushu continent. Upon hearing that they were nothing more than an ant, his best friend says he could assign an immortal assassin who was under his command, not subject to the laws of Kyushu, to deal with that enemy. Shenwu accepts, and his best friend promises him that in 3 days, he will have his enemy's head on a silver platter. Meanwhile, they prepare to enjoy the festival, but then they hear a shout announcing the fairy Jiang Yu-chan. She was a blonde with icy muscles and a jade-like body, considered the #1 beauty in the Xuanwu immortal realm. The woman complains coldly about the presentation and claims that she was only there to borrow an immortal tree. And that's how the first part of this manhwa ends. If you have reached this part of the video, let me tell you that you have been one of the few people to make it here. So comment the word Invincible in the comments. Remember to subscribe to not miss any videos. With that said, see you in the next video.